So welcome to the Beginning Ham Radio meeting for May 6th. Our topic today is Field Day Overview, and we are sponsored by the Portland Amateur Radio Club. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. So one of the things I wanted to do to start out with is I went to the Awrl website, and this is the first time I've seen them actually put a video up there, but I'm going to have some fun and just play the video for you. It's about 8 minutes long, and it really does a good job of kind of giving an overview of Field Day. You'll see some pictures in there that'll give you an idea of what some other people's Field Day setups are.
Well, Awrl Field Day is here again. It's Ham Radio's open house. Every June, more than 35,000 hams throughout North America set up temporary transmitting stations in public places to demonstrate ham radio's science, skill, and service to our communities and our nation. It's so much more than just another contest. It combines public service, emergency preparedness, community outreach, and technical skills, all in a single event. Field Day has been an annual event since 1933 and still remains the most popular event in amateur radio. On the fourth weekend of June of each year, radio amateurs gather with their clubs, groups, or simply with friends to operate from home or remote locations. Field Day is a picnic, a campout, practice for emergencies, an informal contest, and most of all, fun. It's also a time where many aspects of amateur radio come together to highlight our many roles. While some will treat it as a contest, other groups use the opportunity to practice their emergency response capabilities. It is an excellent opportunity to demonstrate amateur radio to the organizations that we might serve in an emergency, as well as the general public. For many clubs, Awrl Field Day is one of the highlights of their annual calendar. The contest part is simply to contact as many other stations as possible, and to learn to operate our radio gear in abnormal situations and less than optimal conditions. However, traditional field day operations were compromised last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since we are still grappling with restrictions and safety practices this year, hams have continued to do their part in stopping the spread of this disease by limiting the size of gatherings, by wearing masks, hand washing, and by observing social distancing. That makes a traditional group field day activity much more difficult to do safely. Awrl, which sponsors and organizes Field Day each year, has altered the rules temporarily to allow more single operators to operate at-home stations. The rules now include plenty of options to either participate safely in groups or for members to participate using their own radios at their own locations. That location may be your ham shack at home, your backyard, a public park, a farm field, or a church parking lot. Anywhere you have the owner's permission and where you are able to follow the health guidelines or guidance from your local government or health professionals. Field Day starts Saturday, June 26, 2021, at 1800 hours UTC, and ends Sunday, the 27th, at 2059 hours UTC. Field Day contacts may be made on 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10-meter HF bands, as well as all VHF and UHF and above amateur radio frequencies. Bands not listed here are off-limits for Field Day operations, as are all FM repeaters. Field Day is open to all amateurs in the areas covered by the Awrl RAC field organizations and countries within IARU Region 2. Remember, Field Day is not a contest. It is an operating exercise. It is, however, a great way to get introduced to contesting without the pressure of actually jumping into a real contest. When you can start setting up depends upon your class and other particulars. The complete set of rules, regulations, and contest scoring are way too involved and detailed to be covered here in this short video. Go to the Awrl website at www.arrl.org and search Field Day 2021 for a complete set of rules and regulations. But I'll go over some of the more basic setups that you'll probably employ. Hams may operate as one or more persons at home on commercial power or alternate power like solar or batteries. It is just as likely that you will be in some remote location like a park, backyard, parking lot, or farm field. Remember to get permission from any property owners and to stay cognizant of the local government and health professional requirements or restrictions. Your class is designated as a number and letter. The number is the number of transmitters operating simultaneously and on different bands under the same call sign. The letter determines the class, and the class of station you are operating depends upon the circumstances. For instance, Class A is a club or group operating from one location, using generators, batteries, or other emergency power to run all transmitters and receivers, and utilizing no permanent antennas or towers. This is what clubs have traditionally done in the past. Class B is one or two hams operating under one call sign from a remote location using generators, batteries, or other emergency power to run all transmitters and receivers. They can run multiple transmitters with no permanent antennas or towers, but must use only one call sign. This would be a great activity for ham radio club members that want to go outdoors, alone or with a buddy, put up a portable antenna, and operate from an emergency power source for a while. Class C is mobile stations. The radio, power source, and antenna must all be mounted in or on the vehicle. Everything must be able to move together. Class D is for home stations running commercial power. It's okay to operate field day from home, and because of a temporary rule waiver, you may count contacts with other Class D stations. The ARRL doesn't want field day to become a contest where everyone stays home and works everyone else at home, but the rules offer flexibility to participate fully from home if you choose. Class E is for home stations operating on emergency power. You can stay at home and operate any other field day stations as long as your transmitter and receiver are powered by a generator, battery, solar panel, or the like. Now this is important. Be aware of an additional temporary rule change for 2021. This year, Class D and Class E stations will be limited to 150 watts PEP output power. That means if you're operating from home on commercial power or emergency power, your transmitting power must be kept to 150 watts or less. Class F is for stations operating from an emergency operations center, such as the Red Cross, firehouse, police station, or hospital. Let's look at some sample stations. One transmitter and one operator operating from a public park with portable antennas and emergency power would be Class 1B. With two transmitters on different bands would be 2B. One transmitter with one operator working from home with commercial power and your regular ham shack gear and antennas would be 1D. Two transmitters and two operators working from home with commercial power and your regular ham shack gear and antennas would be 2D. One transmitter with one operator working from home with battery, generator, solar, or any other non-commercial power and your regular ham shack gear and antennas would be 1E. Two transmitters and two operators working from home with battery, generator, solar, or any other non-commercial power and your regular ham shack gear and antennas would be 2E. One operator with all gear located in or on a vehicle would be 1C. There are more combinations and special caveats than we have time for here. Consult the ARRL website for more detail. One last thing. What modes may we use? Well, the answer is simple. Any mode is acceptable. CW, phone, any digital mode, SSTV, satellite contacts, meteor scatter, RTTY, anything goes. So, show us what you can do. Set up something simple or complicated. Work from home or a cow pasture. Make QSOs with CW or high-speed data. Run your gear on commercial mains or a bicycle generator. Operate high power or QRP. Dust off that old rig and see if the tubes still work. Maybe the new solar cycle will be on your side. Get out there, improve your own personal communications capability, help show off the very best of amateur radio, and have a whole lot of fun while you're at it.
Cool. Any questions about that video? So one of the things that they mentioned is the ARRL. This is an ARRL sponsored event. So all the information that you would want to find is right there at their website. You can just go to awrl.org/fieldday. They have a banner up here at the front, or like you said, you can just type in field day up here, and the first result is going to be their field day information. And down here at the bottom, they actually have all of the things that you would want to know, from the dates to the terms of entry, contact information, awards. One of the interesting things about field day is that, like most other contests, there are rules, and they have a rules packet, and that would be here's, there we go, rules. So they have a complete rules or field day packet, and this is a PDF, and it's probably, I think, at least 30 pages long. You don't necessarily need to know all of it. Field day is somewhat complicated in that there are a lot of ways to get extra points. There's a lot of different classes of stations, and there's a lot of suggestions on how to have fun. And so that's all contained in the field day packet. So if you ever want something to read to help you get to sleep at night, that will help you get to sleep, definitely. But go here and you can actually find all the information that you want. Another interesting thing is you don't necessarily have to just go to the Portland Amateur Radio Club field day. You can go to any of the others that are around the Portland, or if you're traveling that weekend, for example, say to Colorado, there's plenty of stations that are open to the public and that would definitely invite you to come take a look and maybe even operate their field day. And so if you go to field day site locator here, you can actually see a map with, actually, that's not the page I wanted. You can see a map where they'll have pins for the field day. So here's our field day marker. W7LT is our call sign that we're going to be using for field day. So all of the operators that are operating in the Portland Amateur Radio Club will be using that one call sign. And that's the club call sign. We will have a GOTA station. GOTA stands for Get on the Air. And that station is really designed to help people that have either just gotten licensed or have not been operating for the last 3 years, or people that are not licensed currently, because we're going to have a lot of control operators. Even if you don't have a license, you can actually sit down with the control operator and operate the radio during field day, making contacts. There's our information, my name, my phone number, and the location right here. So if you want to find that, just go to, in fact, even if you just Google ARRL field day locator, this will come up for you. There's not a lot of them in there right now. You can see in the entire US, there's only 184 field day sites, but it's a bit early. So I think in about 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see hundreds, if not thousands more. These are not home stations. So these are going to be places where they're public stations. And so you just want to check that out if you want to go to field day. One of the things that happens every year is that QST in their December issue will publish the results. So like the video said, it's not really a contest. It's more of just a emergency preparedness exercise. It's also a great social event, but it's run like a contest. So you still collect points based on the number of contacts that you make. And so in the December issue of the ARRL QST magazine, they will show the results for all of the stations. And so this is the first page of that results. For last year, this was 2020, the Portland Amateur Radio Club, and I'm going to just zoom in here on next page. There we are. So we are Portland ARC, or Portland Amateur Radio Club. This listing right here is a list of combined scores. So we had 4 other stations that were operating as home stations, and they submitted their scores with Portland Amateur Radio Club in their notes. And so their points also counted towards our points. So our total club score was 5,119 points, and we had a total of 5 sites participating. And then if you, this is only available online, the online edition of QST, just because there's so many pages of individual results. And we are here, zoom in a little bit. So we're listed under 4A battery. There's our Portland ARC, there's our call sign. And so for the Oregon City site, we got a total of 4,115 points. We had 5 total sites and only 12 participants. We hope to get more this year, but that's where you would go look at the results, is the December QST issue. I'm going to switch back real quick to the presentation. This is for the last year. What we did was we ran 4A, which the video kind of indicated that means 4 transmitters, and A is for a club station. And we're a 4A battery, which means that all of our radios were run off of batteries that were not charged during the event. So we did use computers for logging, but computers don't have to be run off of battery. We plugged those into just shore power. All of our transmitters last year were Elecraft, and they were running QRP, which is the Q code for low power, which in the case of field day is equal to 5 watts power out of the antenna jack. And we held it at Oregon City. Unfortunately, Portland Parks and Rec decided in 2017, I believe, or 2018, that they no longer wanted people to hang antennas from their trees. And so that kind of hampers field day, because without tall trees, that means that you have to get other types of masts up, and it does make erecting antennas a little bit more difficult. So I ended up volunteering my place. We have 5 acres out here in Oregon City, and we have quite a few tall trees. So we do operate 24 hours. There is another class that you can operate at 27 hours, but you cannot start setup until Saturday. And we're looking for people to sign up to help out in 2021. So if you're willing, I'm going to send out more email information about this, but if you can also attend the Monday meeting at 7 p.m. This coming Monday, and you can go to the w7lt.org website for more information about that. Cool. Any questions about field day in general? And so for Chris, no, we don't simulcast this particular meeting on the repeater. That's only the monthly repeaters, monthly meetings rather. So Chris asked that in the chat. So next Monday's meeting will be simulcast on the repeater. And Jared asked if SOTA and field day activities are compatible. I would say somewhat. They are somewhat similar in that they both kind of combine the outdoors with radio operation. But if you wanted to, like, for example, attend a field day site, you would probably want to operate under the field day call sign of that site rather than your own call sign operating as your own station. However, if you were to go out into the field, you could certainly do make SOTA contacts or make contacts that are classified as SOTA, and also consider them or classify them as field day. So you could actually submit 2 logs that weekend. Cool. Any other questions about field day? So this year, last year, it worked out pretty well considering, everything that we had to do. So it was June of last year, and if you can remember, we didn't have a vaccine, and although it was outdoors, we asked everybody to wear a mask. This year, I think we're going to be a little bit more relaxed. I know it's about a month and a half out is how long we have until the actual event. I don't have any firm answers as to exactly what the precautions that we're going to be taking. Some people are going to be vaccinated. Some people, I have a feeling, are not going to be. So I think it's going to be sort of a common sense, but we'll get more specifics as we get closer to the event. This year, I think we'll have more with food. So we'll be able to barbecue. We'll be able to have a Sunday breakfast. Last year, I think we were still talking, the news was still talking about wiping your groceries down when you came home from the grocery store. And it was more hand washing and surface sanitization than it has been in the past few months. Cool. So I'm going to share the map, kind of like an aerial view of the site that we had last year. So this is my place that's surrounded by the green border here. And I'm going to just zoom in so that you can kind of see where we put the antennas. So we really only operated from the front half of the property. So this is our house. We have a separate garage area. We have a smaller barn that we actually used as one of the transmitting stations. And then the other two transmitting stations were here in the yellow. And they were kind of 20-foot by 10-foot tents that we could fit two stations in that allowed us to social distance. And Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, are you set up to allow for maybe camping out on the property, or is it a show up each day early in the morning kind of thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. No, we actually have a lot of room. We didn't have anybody camp the last 2 years, but if you would like to bring out your tent or even your RV, you are more than welcome to. So we have a lot of space in the back here. It doesn't look like this anymore because we've been able to, this is all Scotch broom right here that you see in the picture, but this was from 4 or 5 years ago, and we've cleared that all out. So we actually have a level field now that you could set up as big a tent as you wanted, or you could put an RV out there as well. We do have water and electric if you need it. And our parking was right here in front of this large barn. And there was plenty of space for cars, trucks, and whatnot. So that's a great question, Steve. So we had two tents here and here, and we used one more, the small uninsulated barn, as 3 operating tent areas, but we had 4 stations. So we would usually have 2 radios in this tent, 2 radios in this tent. The nice thing about field day is that the go to station does not count as one of the transmitters, and 1 extra VHF station also does not count. So technically we had 6 radios going at the same time, but we still were able to only count 4 actual transmitters. Then the white lines here are the antennas. And last year, what we did was we had a, this antenna right here was the 40-meter wire beam antenna. It's a little over 100 feet long, and it was about 75 to 80 feet high. I guess one thing I didn't mention is this red line that goes all the way from these trees to, let's see if I can pull this down, all the way over to the trees of my neighbors here. That was called a Catenary Line, and it's made out of a pretty thick Dacron rope. And we hung all the antennas on that. So we would hook all the antennas up and then pull up this long Catenary line. And the nice thing about doing this is that the way that the antennas operate, you try to configure them so that they don't have a lot of interference, and they're not like the 20-meter station is not interfering with the 40-meter station. And this is one great way to do it, is you kind of line them all up horizontally and vertically. And then these other 2 diamond-shaped ones were what they called delta loop antennas, and they can actually operate in 2 configurations. One's a loop antenna and one's a rhombic antenna. And there is a little relay that is at the end here of both of, or the corner of these antennas, that you can switch the connectivity in and out. So if it's connected, then it's a loop. If it's disconnected, then it's a rhombic antenna. And we also had a 160-meter antenna, a dipole sloper antenna here. And that we used, I think, for 80 and 160 meters. That antenna is almost 300 feet long, and it did end up fitting between these 2 trees right here fairly well. And then the food area is where this car is parked. We'll have a large garage here to kind of protect everybody from the elements, and have a place for people to sit down. Last year, we did have a Zoom conference that was going the full 24 hours. I'm not sure if we're going to do that this year. However, that was kind of nice because a lot of people wanted to come, but just didn't feel safe enough to come at that time last June. So it's a pretty fun event. And if anybody wants to come out and help with setup, one of the biggest setup things that we're going to do is put up the antennas, just because it's such a large catenary line, and the antennas, putting those up takes a lot of effort. Not a lot of effort as in it's a lot of work, but it just takes a lot of people to stretch out the antennas, stretch out the rope, pull them up. The trees themselves on either side of the catenary line are approximately 110 feet high, which gives us pretty good elevation, because even at the center of the catenary line, it's up still about 65 to 75 feet off the ground. Cool. Any questions in general about either field day or anything else? Oh yeah, so Denny wanted to make sure I covered the field day exchange. Thanks, Denny, for reminding me. So it is modeled after a contest, which means that it's just a very quick and simple exchange. So if I'm going to contact Jean, for example, then I would call CQ, and Jean would answer, and she would answer with her exchange. And the exchange is just simply going to be that 2-character station designator. So in our case, it's going to be 4A, 4 alpha. If Jean was operating from home, then it would be 1 delta, assuming that she's just operating with 1 transmitter. And then it's your, that's called your class, and your section is going to be what ARRL section you're in, because Oregon's not very populous. OR is the section for all of Oregon. However, for example, California, because there's a lot more people there, they actually have 9 different sections. So the San Francisco Bay Area, if you're in the South Bay Area, that would be SJC, or San Joaquin Valley, or Santa Clara Valley is also down there. And then you want to give your call sign. And so for us, that was W7LT. And am I missing anything, Denny? I need to just quickly peek at what the field day exchange is, because I don't remember at this point.
Well, we will copy the other station's exchange as part of the log, and they will copy ours, and then we'll be sure that we have each other's information correct, and move on. The SOTA is a different exchange, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, and so if you're going to operate SOTA and field day, you just, all you really want to do is just make sure that you get all the information for both of the contests that you are participating in. And I'm just looking up the exchange right now just to make sure that I remember what it is. So Chris asked if the GOTA radios are fixed, or can we bring ones we're familiar with? So for our field day, we're going to just set up the stations a couple days before, and they'll just be fixed. So field day is a good time to kind of experiment with the radios that you have. Although kind of one suggestion or one tip is to make field day less frustrating. If you want to do something like that on your own, whether it's at home or whether you take it to a park, make sure you're familiar enough with your radio that you know how to operate it, maybe without much reference to your manual, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting everything set up and then not knowing how to operate your radio. So for our field day, our GOTA stations will be set. We'll have some people bring radios out and set them up in the couple days before field day starts. But we'll have people there that can help you operate the radio if you're not familiar with, for example, especially the HF radios. VHF radios are fairly simple. They'll just already be set to the different frequencies. You don't have to worry about filtering and things like that. And we'll have VHF antennas for those too. Cool. Any other questions? So this year, one of the things we'll definitely bring out the barbecue, and then we'll plan for a kind of a Sunday breakfast for everybody. And it'll be a hot breakfast. We do have, we will have one porta potty at one side of the place, one side of the property. On the other side, we'll actually have a full working bathroom. So for those who don't like porta potties, you can use that, and that'll be by the garage. And then, of course, we get donuts in the morning on Friday and Saturday. So if you want to come out for that, especially for setup on Friday, that would be a great time to come out if you want to kind of meet the other people that are in the club, and also just kind of learn how to set up antennas in trees if you want to do that at your own place. A couple of years ago, I built an antenna launcher, which uses a tennis ball, and it's made out of PVC. And you pump it up with about 60 pounds of air pressure from a kind of like a what am I thinking of? An air pump, like for your car. And then once you kind of aim the antenna, then you actually release it with an electronic solenoid, and it would shoot the tennis ball. And I had to put, what I did was I weighted the tennis ball by putting some pennies in it, about 27 pennies, I think made it about 4 ounces. And that helped it, when it goes up and over the tree, it helps bring the ball down through the branches, because if it's tennis ball is too light, it tends to get caught up on some of the trees branches. We've had a couple that have stayed up there, but they don't stay up there very long. Usually the wind brings them down. So that worked fairly well. However, a couple of years ago, I did end up buying kind of a used drone, one of the larger ones that can actually carry up to 2 pounds. So what we've been doing recently is just using that drone to hold the tennis ball. And then once we get it over the tree and it's connected to a lightweight rope, then we will drop the tennis ball. And then that would be used to pull up the larger line. And then we use that line then to hang the antennas. So if you want some experience with that, take a look at how we do that. Definitely come out on either Friday, Saturday. I'm sorry, Thursday night afternoon at 5 o'clock or Friday in the morning. Cool. Any other questions, comments? You guys are quiet tonight.
Hey, Max.
Hey, Steve.
On the Friday setup day, do you anticipate that being a full day or just until things are completely set up?
So it'll be kind of just like daylight hours. What we'll do is we'll start in the morning right around 9 o'clock. But most likely it'll be start out with like antennas. Hopefully we'll get the catenary line have already been put up on Thursday. However, if not, we'll kind of finish that up. But then it'll be setting up tents and setting up stations. The great thing about this particular location is that security really isn't an issue. When Portland Amateur Radio Club had their field day events at a public park in Portland, they really couldn't leave anything out. And what they found out was that even if they shot the ropes up into the trees, those aren't safe. So they shot all the ropes up into the trees, and they were going to just, kind of hook up the bigger lines, the next day to pull up the antennas. However, I guess some people came by and cut all the ropes, so they kind of had to start over. Fortunately, here we can actually set everything up, except the radios. We don't usually leave them outside in the dampness overnight. Well, also, because of the winter storm that we had this, what was it, February? We will have lots of firewood, and we'll have at least one large bonfire here that everybody can kind of gather around, and if they're cold. We also had heaters last year. We'll have those this year inside of or near the tents. So nobody got too cold. We never know what June is going to be like for heat or cold. Generally, it's going to get a little bit chilly at night. And we just kind of have to moderate the heat during the day with screens, shades, and tarps and things like that. But the tents that we had last year worked actually pretty well. In fact, that's one thing I could do, I guess, is show you some of the pictures from last year. So Chris asked if we had everything that we need. For the most part, although I think that there's some items that we would encourage people to bring. And we'll have more information on that on Monday at that meeting. We'll have a list of things that we have, a list of things that we need. We're pretty fortunate here. We probably don't need generators. Any electric that we need is available just kind of in the 2 or 3 barns that we have on location. So a couple 50 to 100 foot extension cords, and we have lighting and all the electric we need for the logging computers, which is another thing. Each station, typically the best way to do it is to have 2 people run each station. One person is actually making the contacts on the radio, and the other person is logging. And logging, what we do is we use laptops that are all networked together. And the reason why that's so important is because you want to make as few duplicate contacts as possible. You can contact the same person on different bands, and that's fine, but you don't want to contact the same person on the same band. So for example, if you contacted somebody on the 40 meter band when the field day first started at 11 a.m. on Saturday, you don't want to contact them again on 40 meters on Sunday. And when you're making hundreds of contacts, it's hard to keep track of who you contacted already. However, the logging software is great because even if somebody else made a contact 5 hours before you did, as you start typing in the call sign, it will flag or turn that section red if you've already made a contact with that person on that band. So, which is kind of nice because there's nothing more frustrating than contacting the same person more than once. You don't get any points for duplicates. Yeah, so Ken, thanks. Yes, so different modes on the same band are definitely acceptable. So the park field day, we usually do slightly more CW contacts than we do voice contacts. CW contacts or Morse code contacts are just quicker. And they're also a little bit easier just because when you get 10, 20 people on the same frequency, all trying to make contacts with each other using voice, it gets pretty crowded. It's hard to distinguish or understand or separate out letters and numbers that are being spoken. However, when you're doing it with Morse code, because the bandwidth is so much smaller, you usually can either use filtering to kind of filter out the other people, or you can move up and down frequency just a little bit, or you can just hear the tone difference. And that makes it a lot easier to do Morse code contacts. Plus, Morse code, we're only using 5 watts of power. So making a cross-country contact with voice is a lot more tricky than it is making Morse code contacts with 5 watts. Just to kind of give you an idea, Dan, who's not here tonight, but he regularly comes over to this location and makes a lot of Morse code contacts in the evening on 20, 40, and 80 meters. And there really is no limitation as far as making Morse code contacts. It's not as tricky or as challenging as voice is. Voice, you really just need a lot more power usually. 5 watts isn't a lot of power to make, you know, a contact from Oregon to New York or Oregon even to Texas. It can be done, but it's just so much easier with Morse code. Plus, Morse code gives you more points. So Morse code, because we're operating on battery, we'll get 5 points for each contact we make. And I think for voice, it's just 2 points. And we're not really a club that is adamant or you know, going after the points. This is more of kind of a recreational social thing. There are some clubs in the Bay Area where they have 80, 90 plus people operating field day down there. And so if you are not making enough contacts, they may ask you very nicely to just get up and so somebody else that's making a lot more contacts can sit down in your chair. So yeah, Steve mentioned that the only tricky part about CW contacts is learning CW. Absolutely, you will. I think field day and straight key night, which is going to be New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, are the kind of the two opportunities when even people that don't know Morse code very well can still participate in something fun like this. The nice thing about Morse code is that almost all operators, if you're only sending and receiving at 5 or 10 words a minute, they will slow down for you, and they'll also do a lot of repeats for you. The other thing that you can do is you can just, even if you don't know Morse code, you can help a Morse code operator log. So, and that's a really big help. That's just not like lip service or anything. So the Morse code operator will kind of just tell you what the call sign is and what the information is, and then you can help them by logging it into the computer. It's really easy. You don't need to know Morse code, but you're really helping the operator out because they're able to concentrate on transmitting and receiving and not which keys to press on the keyboard to get the entry to go in. And Steve, you had another question?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to, monopolize the questions, but I'm.
Oh no, that's fine.
We'll give you a break from talking, so I'll that CW conversation kind of goes into what my personal experience has been as a new ham operator for the last 2 months or so. Is the more that I get into it and learn it, the more I realize I don't know anything about it, and so I've actually been dabbling in the whole CW aspect. Because when I got into it, I thought about, ham was just, talking on the radio. Obviously, I now know that's not just the case, and you have CW and data and RTTY and all that kind of stuff. But maybe it is an opportunity to talk about, for us beginners, is there a natural progression from voice to CW to data or RTTY to one of the PKs or something along those, and the different modes that you're talking about. And again, just tossing out an idea of something to talk about if you need talking points.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Steve. That's a very good point, or a very good question, because I think everybody's different. A lot of people do get into the hobby today just based on either emergency communication, or they want to just use a handheld or a mobile in their car to talk to people over repeaters or through simplex. But eventually, what many people find, or everybody finds, is that ham radio is really, it's an umbrella hobby. So it's really just a description or an umbrella of literally hundreds and hundreds of sub hobbies in the group. So not only do you have voice with repeaters or simplex and handhelds, but you also have all the digital modes, which have been just exploding as of recent. So the last few years, it seems like there's 2 or 3 new digital modes that appear every year. So some of the original digital modes are RTTY, TSK31, But there's a lot of newer ones out there that rival or can be even better than Morse code, in the sense that you can make contacts around the world with just a few watts of power. Before it was, before a lot of these super optimized digital modes came out, you didn't have that opportunity. So you could, yes, try to talk to other people on HF, voice or phone is what they call it, but it can be frustrating, especially with these low sunspot cycles that we've been having. So a lot of people will either migrate towards Morse code in order to improve or increase their efficiency in talking with people around the country or around the world, or they will go into digital modes. So there's pluses and minuses to both of them. I think the one plus of just going the digital mode route is that you don't have to learn Morse code. Learning Morse code for a select few, maybe 10%, 5%, it's super easy. It seems like they just start practicing, and 2 months later, they're competing with the people that have been running Morse code for many, many years. Adjust my video, just give me a second. For others like me, I've been studying Morse code since I first got my license. When I was a technician, it was required. When I was a general, it was required. But then after that, they dropped Morse code requirements, so I got my extra without it. However, that's been probably 20, 25 years that I've been practicing Morse code. I'm probably good at about 20 words a minute, but I don't seem to be able to go any faster than that, which for the most part is okay. The one big advantage of Morse code is that you can take a very small, simple, inexpensive radio with a very lightweight antenna, and you don't have to lug around a computer with a bigger power supply or a tablet or anything like that. And it's one of the most efficient modes. With less than a watt of power, you can easily talk to people, definitely throughout the country, if not throughout the world. However, your computer really is what's in your brain. So your computer, the decoding and encoding all happens in your brain. Whereas if you're doing digital modes, you have to bring the equipment to do that. The other thing that I think to keep in mind is I encourage everybody to try everything. So if you're interested in Morse code, or if you are interested in digital, try both of them and see which one you like. For me, what I found is that there are a lot of digital modes that I do like. I did some PSK31, I've done some FT8. What I find is that the digital modes that allow you to be a little more verbose in maybe doing some what they call rag chewing, whereas you're exchanging more than just your state, your grid, and your call sign, is more enjoyable for me. FT8, and there's some other variants, is one of the newer digital modes, but they only allow you to exchange 13 characters at a time. And it takes several back and forth exchanges in order to get a full contact, which is usually your call sign, your signal report, maybe a grid square, and maybe a by, or like 73. Takes a couple minutes, but it's digital and you can run very low power on very marginal antennas and still make some wonderful contacts. It is, for the most part, automated. I kind of find that, for me at least, as interesting as watching paint dry. So I kind of picked it up, did it a little bit, and then I kind of haven't done it since. For me, I find learning Morse code much, much, much more challenging. However, it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of one of those skills that once you pick up, it's just really cool to have. You're probably one of the most coveted and wanted people at any kind of field day event, just because everybody's always looking for more Morse code operators. There's a lot of Morse code people, ham radio operators, that do Morse code that have learned it in the Navy or in their job previously, or have been doing it for many, many years. There's fewer people, well, I can't say that. There's actually a lot of people now that are learning Morse code that have not, it wasn't part of their career in the past. So I can't say it's easy, but it is definitely a challenge. But then once you kind of get to that where you want to be on that mountain, then it's something to be really proud of. So that's a great question, Steve. Thank you. Any other comments? The one comment I actually wanted to make is if you are interested in learning Morse code, we do have a couple of meeting topics, I think, that do cover Morse code. One of the next week's meeting is going to actually be operating outdoors. We're going to focus a little bit on SOTA, which is summits on the air, and POTA, which is parks on the air. And hang on a second. But anytime that you want to kind of get away from the noise, the RF noise, the radio frequency noise of your house, which has a lot of LED lights, it has a lot of wall warts. Solar panels are notorious for giving out a lot of noise. If you're an HF operator, a lot of times you'll say, you know, I'm tired of this noise floor. I want to go out and get to some place that is much more quiet. And so, excuse me, operating outdoors is actually really enjoyable. So that's next week. That's the next week's beginning ham radio meeting. All right, I need some other people to ask questions because I'm my throat is getting a little sore. Paul had a link there. That's cool. I haven't seen that article. Morse code is neat because you can, you know, there's lots of movies, spy movies, or the Poseidon Adventure, I remember, is one where you could actually, they had Morse code on there as a way to pass messages back and forth. Cool. Well, we're going to have a new website that's going to be up in a couple of weeks. We're still trying to get the domain pointed to the new site, but there'll be a lot more information on the newer site about Morse code and how to learn it.
Yeah, I started the Learn CW Online course. And so I know K and M, and they throw the U in there, and I'm all confused. So I got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's a fun site. And for those of you who want to go or want to check it out, it's LCWO, which is Learn CW Online. And they, a guy in Germany created it. And there's several different options that you can do. You can practice both sending and receiving Morse code. Kind of to give you an idea, to learn Morse code at 5 words a minute is actually not that much of a challenge. It wouldn't take you, you know, years and years to learn it at that speed. I realized I was a kid when I did this. So when I was 15, I was able to learn 5 words a minute in about a week of just a few hours a day. If you spread that over a few months, you could easily do that. The challenge, of course, is, you know, increasing your speed 10, 15, anything over 15, you know, it takes a little bit more practice, but essentially it's really just like muscle memory. When you hear it, you just kind of picture the letter in your mind. And as you're going over 20 words a minute, then you're picturing words in your mind. So it's kind of like, you know, it is a bit like music. So some people are just good at music. And if you are, then most likely you would be good at learning Morse code. Has anybody been using digital modes?
I've been playing with FT8 a lot.
And how is that?
You know, my take on it, I can call up like Pskreporter, and I can set my unit down to 5 watts, set it to call CQ, and I can see that I'm getting to this location, right? And then maybe if I go to 10 or 15 watts, I'm now outside the US and I'm hitting Japan and things. I can see where my transmit's getting to. I can with the software, I can hear lots of people that I can't necessarily get back to. Like the last few days, I've been hearing Hungary, Slovenia, France today, but I can't get back to them with my radio, my power, my antenna, right? Of course, we're
How
quite
much
a
power are
ways
you
away.
running?
Well, I've cranked it up to 100 watts, which is really kind of a no-no with FT8. They want you to stay under 30.
Yeah.
But it's a long haul, you know. With the PSK reporter map, I can see even with 5 watts or 10 watts that when I just start calling CQ, there's a few up and down into California. I can hit Alaska. Then I skip the Rockies and end up clear over about the Great Lakes. And then I almost get to the East Coast. The one state I haven't got is Delaware right now. I've gotten everybody else, right? So the challenge there is just to make the contacts. It can be very mindless if you just tell it to CQ and let it run. If you're paying attention to what you're doing, it can be a challenge because you're sitting there just doing a blanket CQ and oh, here's somebody. Oh, there's a France or a European Russian station, which means it's Russia closer to the EU versus the Asiatic Russian, which is closer to China and Japan and this side, Pacific side of the country and stuff. So you might want to just click on it and see if you can really get to them or not. So some people really just want to talk to people, but I got my general in January, so I'm still really new, but it allows me to visualize what my radio is doing.
Yes.
Is it performing? Is it doing what I think it ought to? Is the antenna I've got, like my first antenna for the HF was an end-fed half wave, and it's running at a diagonal, basically southeast to northwest, and I'm not getting a lot of south of the U.S. border, right? And so somebody gave me a G5RV Junior, which is the 51-foot version of the 102-foot dipole, right? And I've got it run dead east-west, and I'm getting about the same results with it. So,
so you had it both orientations.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've got them both at the same time right now. The G5RV is not up quite as high as I would like, but it would be touching the end fed because of the droop and stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think actually the G5RV Junior is actually picking up Europe a little better. And I don't know how much of that is going due east or how much of that's going over the pole.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering, I'm just going to pull up a PSK reporter and kind of show you what Kirk is talking about. So this is PSK reporter, and right now what I've done is I've just plugged in Kirk's call sign here, all modes for the last 12 hours, and you can see that like these are the people that have heard or stations that have heard his call. So he's been heard by a lot of people all throughout the US. It looks like the Alaska, Russia, Japan. And if you click on these different stations, you can find out more information about like what band, what frequency, what mode, things like that. The wonderful thing about living in the digital age with the internet is that there's a ton of stations online that have their radios kind of connected to the internet. And so as you're transmitting out your CQ with your call sign on digital mode or Morse code, then these other stations kind of pick up your call and they'll report it back to this main server that can then display it on a map. And so it's great for many reasons. Kirk kind of mentioned that he's for testing out antennas. One of the things that ham radio people like to do is, not only put up a radio and put up an antenna, but find out, well, how well is it working? And so this is one great way that you can find out how well it's working, is just by checking Pskreporter and finding out which stations are actually hearing you, whether or not you make contacts. But Kirk, are you actually making contacts in the US? Okay, it's just overseas.
For the most part, yeah. Like right now, I just came up on 40 meters.
Mhm.
So check me for the last 15 minutes. And I'm only running 5 watts. And did you get RZA in there? Is that what it is? I can't quite.
Yes,
it's
KJ7 RZA.
Okay.
Yep. And you're 40 meters?
40 meters on FT8, yeah.
There we
I
go.
got somebody trying to answer me.
Yeah, so nothing overseas yet, but
No, that's
several
showing way
people
too
in
much. Change
California.
the what at the top, the sent by.
Okay.
Something's wrong. I shouldn't have any. You've got, see, 40 meters, because I haven't been transmitting in an hour or more.
No, it's just showing 2 minutes.
No, but somewhere up there at the top, something, you get the wrong call. I can't read the call sign.
It's a KJ7RZA.
Okay, and it says sent by and FT8, and I shouldn't have anything close to that. I should only have 20 or 30 here in the US probably. So I can't, that screen's kind of small. I can't read all that.
Yeah. Let's see if I can blow it up a little bit.
Kaboom.
Yeah.
See, sent by, call sign, or KJ7RZA, sent by, signals, FT8. For the last 50, I click go on it again. I mean, something's screwy in Denmark here. Anyway, normally what I see is a bunch of yellow things here. Let me pull it up on mine. We'll see what.
Okay. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, let me get it pulled up here first.
Okay.
PSK. I may have a bunch of other stuff checked or something that you don't have checked, or vice versa.
Yeah. So we are having like one of the weekly meeting topics is going to be in September, but it's actually going to be on digital modes such as FT8 and PSK31. A lot of these digital modes were actually invented just by a couple of people down in the Bay Area. And originally, the FT8 and JT variants were designed for meteor scatter and moon bounce. But they found, and most of those are done with VHF. So 2 meters, 70 centimeters. But what they found is that these modes are so effective at low signal. Oftentimes they can hear signals that are below the noise floor. So where you and I would only hear static, your computer can actually pick out signals and find messages in the static. So a lot of people have adapted these modes to HF so that you can have a lot of advantages, just like CW of, oh, there you go.
Now see, that's on 5 watts. So I can see where on 40 meters where I'm going.
That's great.
So if I were to twist this up and come back in 5 minutes, I can probably get half the US or maybe the whole US. 40 meters is not quite very good for me this time of night. You can keep talking and I'll let this run up on 20.
Yeah, so for those of you who are interested in getting your general license, it's General really opens up your ability to transmit on HF, which are the kind of the long range or long haul frequencies. It's great because with it, just a technician or a novice, if you still have that, you're really limited to Morse code in the 80 meter and I think 15 meter and 40 meter. And so unless you wanted to learn Morse code, then you're kind of stuck unless you want to upgrade. You do have voice and data privileges in 10 meters on the 10 meter band. However, the 10 meter band right now is very local. So don't expect to get very many miles outside of Dodge. When I first started in ham radio back in the late 80s, early 90s, I would wake up every morning in the summer and turn my radio on, and I would easily talk to people in China, Australia on 10 meters. And that's just because there were a lot more sunspots during that time. The last few sunspot cycles that we've had have been pretty low sunspots, 100 sunspots on average daily or less. And so we're hoping to get more sunspot cycles. The predictions, though, aren't great. Remember, propagation isn't everything. You do still have to turn your radio on in order for you to send and receive. But 10 meters will be a lot better probably in 2 to 5 years as the sunspot cycle increases starting this year. Oh, hey, Kirk, there you go. So Kirk is located up in the upper left-hand corner where it says 0 minutes in the Oregon section. But then these are the other stations that have heard him or heard his call sign being transmitted. And as he hovers over each one, or if you click on them, then you can actually pull up all the information about those, such as the distance between the two stations, the time, the frequency. If you're using Morse code, it'll tell you the speed, the average speed that's being sent. So this is called Pskreporter.info. If you just type in PSK Reporter, you can find it. It's one of the great things about living in the digital age, especially with the internet, is that you can actually find a lot more information about your station.
Can you hit display options? Because I'm showing a whole bunch too, and I'm wondering if it's display options.
Yeah, Kirk, if you hit display options, what are the things that you have checked there? So you have hide city lights and hide faint monitors and hide monitors if no reports. I think that second one, hide monitors with no reports, is probably one that will hide all of the. Did that work? If you check that one?
No, it didn't, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to adjust.
I had you
mine
muted.
too. Oh, yeah.
So let's go back up to display and show all.
Try just reloading the page too after you change the display options, because I had that same issue and now I'm showing what Kirk is seeing.
So did you go completely out and come back in? Is that what you did?
No, I just hit the refresh button on the browser. There are thousands and thousands of stations that are connected to the internet that are listening for other people's signals.
And there is actually a checkbox that you need to turn on if you want to report who you're hearing.
Ah, gotcha.
Somewhere in the settings, I'd have to go back and take a look.
So
But
they don't just upload your information without your
again, people on the East Coast, I'm running 5 watts right now. So you can go a long way. With 10, 20 watts, I regularly see Alaska get contacts in Japan. I've had contacts with the New Caledonia, Fiji, Australia, New Zealand. I'm really good to the Pacific. So it's a little bit of a challenge. Like I said, right now, the only state I don't have is Delaware. So I can zoom this in and I can come in and say, is anybody in Delaware actually listening to me or can hear me, right? Sometimes there's a big gap here. Sometimes like these three here, they're off the coast, right? So, and Delaware is right along the coast. So I don't know if there's only 3 HF stations in Delaware or they've all gone to bed right now because it's 10:20 at night on the East Coast. But
So, Kirk,
I enjoy this as a way to gauge what my radio is doing.
Yeah. Are you going to be submitting the contacts for like a Worked All States award?
Yes. If we do this and I go to Qrz and go to let me see, is my log here? Yeah, there it is. Let me move the videos off the screen stuff here. Let me go to my log. If you don't belong to Qrz, all this stuff is free. So if we go to awards, like here's the 50 state award, and you can get a, if you look here in the top right-hand corner, there's mixed. So if I go, you can get awards for all 50 states in CW, just digital, mixed mode, which is digital and voice. And then there's phone is voice. And if you come over here, you can zoom in. And as you get them, as you log a contact, it'll turn yellow. If you don't have it, and once it's confirmed by the other station, it'll turn green. And as you can see, the one station I don't have is Delaware. And there's also awards for continents, of which they don't count Antarctica. They only count 6. And I don't have anybody in Africa yet. Just can't get there. United States counties, Europe, you can get an award from Qrz for getting 66 out of the different, they say entities, so sometimes they're not necessarily a full-blown country. Like for the US, Alaska and Hawaii are considered different countries, if you will, just for the purpose of the DX, because they're so far outside of the 48, continental 48. And you can see there's one here for, there's Europe, like I said, there's Asia. So you can see I've got some green, still got a lot of red to go. So anyway.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Kirk.
So yeah, I got a long way to go. And if I never get Delaware, I want to give up on FT8 as a focus point and start working on phone contacts. So
that's great. And these are all Qrz awards. I know ARRL has their own awards. If you like awards, amateur radio is definitely the place to be. They give out a lot of certificates and awards. Some of them, the one I think probably most coveted award is the DXCC, which is the DX Century Club. And that is awarded to ham radio operators that have contacted, I think it's close to 300 countries. There are only just over or slightly over 300 countries. And I think if you contact, it's like 212 countries. I don't remember the exact number. Then you get this award from the ARRL. Now, obviously, you have to submit your contacts to the entity that is awarding the awards. So if you make a lot of contacts but never log them or never submit them, you're not going to get the award. However, one of our upcoming meetings that we're going to have is going to be on logging, specifically logging with computer and submitting them to entities like QRZ or the ARRL. ARRL, they have a program, it's a web-based program called Logbook of the World. And really it's just for submitting and confirming contacts. It's not really a logbook per se, but it's not an easy thing to set up. But we have the Mike Ritz, the Northwest Division Director. He's actually going to be joining us. I think it's in September to talk about all about logging. And that's during our regular meeting, monthly meeting. Cool. We just have a couple minutes left. I want to thank you very much, Kirk, for sharing that.
Sure, glad to.
Yeah.
There's
Looks like
lots, and on logging, there's lots of different tools, lots of different places to log. I figured out how to take my Logbook of the World stuff and upload it into QRZ. That's real easy once you get it set up.
Yes.
And as you make contacts, you can look them up in QRZ. And if they've put their bio stuff in there, there's generally a line about QSL, where they're putting their stuff and where you should put contacts with them at and vice versa type thing. So,
yeah. I mean, it used to be that everybody sent QSL cards because there was no such thing as the internet. Now that postage prices have gone up, it becomes very cost prohibitive, even in the US, to send out postcards to everybody that you make contacts with. It's still done, but Logbook of the World and QRZ has kind of helped a lot keep the cost down and helping people make sure that they confirm their contacts.
And you can look up a lot of people in QRZ. Matter of fact, a lot of times, and in your browser, if you just type in a call sign, generally the first 2 or 3 hits, one of them will say QRZ.com or something in it, and that's their information on QRZ. The other one that pops up a lot is the FCC information. So a lot of what the FCC has about you and your license is public information.
Yeah, so if you're interested in, like Kirk said, get a QRZ account. It is free, and you have a blank profile page there that you can actually fill out with a little bit of your information. And if you want to just kind of browse around and see what other people have put on their bio page, feel free to do that. And like Kirk said, information about how to confirm contacts are often found on the QRZ page. So if you contact somebody over in Germany and you want to get some type of contact with them, like a QSL card, it'll say whether or not they send out or wish to receive QSL cards, and then how to get it to them, either through the bureau or direct mail, things like that. So cool. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Any last questions? Otherwise, I hope to see everybody on Monday at 7 o'clock when we have our meeting. And we're going to go more into depth about actually planning. And Jared asked about the CW class signup. It's coming soon. So as long as you're on our mailing list, you'll definitely get information about that. And I'll actually have Dan, who is the person that leads the class. They're not doing it right now. It's just kind of in between classes. But it looks like we had a couple of people who were very interested in taking the CW class, so which is great, because then he'll have at least 4 or 5 people that they usually meet every week. And if you can't come every single week, that's fine. But I would just say, if you really want to learn Morse code, don't stretch it out over many years. Just try to, make it in as a few months as possible. It gets fun, actually, once you start learning all the letters and the numbers. Cool. Well, I appreciate everybody attending tonight, and I hope to see you next Monday. And let me share my screen. I just want to show you the upcoming meeting topics that we have. So next week is going to be operating outdoors, followed by R of propagation. We'll talk a little bit about contesting, both VHF and HF contesting. And even if you don't have your general class license and you're kind of stuck on the VHF, UHF bands, that's fine. There are a lot of VHF contests. The most popular, most famous one is going to be the Awrl Vhf Contest. And that can be a lot of fun because you can make a lot of contacts with a bunch of local people. And the one kind of fun thing that I haven't done yet, but I'd like to try someday soon is being a rover. And this is a person that makes contacts while you're in the car, not while you're driving. So if you can take somebody else, that would be great. But you can drive to different grid squares for the VHF Awrl contest and make a lot of different contacts and rack up a lot of points. We'll talk about DMR, Fusion, and D-Star. These are all digital, not digital modes, but digital, I guess they are digital modes for VHF mainly. We'll talk about some basic antennas that you can even build, installing a mobile radio in your car. And finally, SSTV is what I have on the list, which is slow scan TV. That's a fun mode that even technician people can get into.